I'm not currently experiencing any hauntings, but I do have a tale of a spiritual encounter. I will begin by prefecting story with the events leading up to the event. My grandfather passed away in hospice care in July 2000. I spent his last night on earth with him, holding his hand and reading the Bible to him, which was his favorite literature. He was an artist and a carpenter, and spent his last remaining years up in his home carving beautiful artwork out of wood. He loved his simple life and carved because he wanted to, never once selling his museum-quality work. He would only give it away to anyone who truly appreciated it. At 88, he was about 80% deaf and completely blind in one eye, and nearly blind in the other. After a stroke 6 months earlier, his health declined quickly, and he simply gave up on life. As he lay in the bed, I sang to him, although he probably could not hear me or even knew that I was there, and he was in a coma-like state with his eyes open. He had stopped eating, and he was severely underweight, and it was hard for me to see him like that, knowing how much he loved life and living. Many times he cried in his last few years, saying that he loved his life and didn't want to die. During his last living moments with me, I looked down into his distant, foggy eyes, knowing he couldn't hear or see me, and told him that the baby goose that he held at my house the last time he visited had grown up now and had 4 babies of her own. His eyes filled up with tears and turned red, and his mouth began to quiver as if he was trying to say something. He hadn't spoken in nearly 2 weeks. His love for animals and nature transcended through his limitations that night. I knew he would probably die that night, so I sat next to him with my hand on his chest, feeling his every breath and heartbeat. He didn't pass away until the next day, after I left. He was alone, which is what I didn't want. I didn't want his spirit to leave his body and to look down at an empty room. That bothered me for a long time. In an attempt to comfort ourselves, we turned to his Bible. He was much more dedicated to the word than we were ever, but knowing that it was so close to his heart, we thought it would ease our minds. My mother said to read something that he had underlined or highlighted, which is something his Bible was full of. I read the first thing I opened that was underlined. You do not have to understand the Bible to feel the power behind these words, which read, "For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Where there, comfort one another with these words." We all felt a chill run through us. At his wake, I waited until everyone left, and I cut a small lock of his beautiful, thick white hair and placed it in an envelope. As myself and my friend walked to the vehicle to leave, I opened the door, and a mourning dove flew into me as if trying to enter the truck with me. It injured its wings, and I brought it home. I rescue and rehabilitate small animals all the time, so I mended its wing and let it go about a week later. I took that as a sign from my grandfather, as we had that bond of loving all creatures, great and small. A couple of weeks later, in August, my best friend was at my house, and I was showing her videotapes of Papa, that is what I called him, because she had never met him. I wanted to share with her the kind of person he was. For nearly 2 hours, we watched him talk about God, Leonardo da Vinci, his childhood, his 24 brothers and sisters, his beloved mother, and we saw him play his guitar and sing old, sad songs about homeless children and hobos, songs that made grown men cry, including himself. After the tape was finished, I got up to go to the kitchen for something to drink, and my friend went to the restroom. At that moment, we both heard a loud musical tone that sounded like a doorbell. Since I do not have a doorbell, we both said, "What the heck is that?" We both re-entered the living room where we had been watching the tape and searched everywhere where the sound had come from. My heart sank as I realized what it was. About 2 years earlier, I had one of those cheap doorbells that you plug into the wall, using a battery-operated button at your front door to operate the sound. I became so irritated by all the neighborhood kids ringing it that I just took the button off and put it in my piano stool. The battery had gone bad anyway. I never unplugged the part that rings. I'd forgotten it was there because it was hidden behind a chair. That was eerie enough, but what really got me thinking was when I explained to my friend that I had the ringer set to only ring one long tone. To change it to the traditional two-tone ding-dong, you had to take the back off of the unit and set the switches according to the manual. Needless to say, it did ring in the ding-dong fashion. Oddly enough, it was my friend who said, "Maybe it was your grandfather saying hi." It hadn't even occurred to me. Shortly after that, I was explaining what happened to my mother on the phone, and it happened again. She could hear it, and we both fell silent. He was letting me know that his fears of leaving his family behind were pointless, and that he was with the rest of his family in heaven. I believe he was thanking me for being there for him when no one else could. It has been 3 years since his own death, and the doorbell has not rang since. Hey, my name is Maddie. Today, me and my best friend Summer had a strange encounter with a malevolent spirit. Let me explain what happened. A few months ago, me and one of my other friends, Alicia, met an 8-year-old spirit named Reese through a Ouija board. She seemed like a very sweet and innocent girl. She told us at her own will, and I repeat her own will, how she met her death. She apparently got beaten to death by her abusive father. Then a few weeks went by, and I introduced Reese to my now best friend Summer. They got along very well. It didn't seem like she had any sorts of problem with her or anyone she met. The next day we were playing when we got a call from my friend Amy. Long story short, she had an encounter with a spirit named Sarah. She claimed that Sarah was a very stubborn spirit. It took her hours just to get her to say goodbye. Amy also stated that Sarah seemed like a very lonely and clingy spirit who did not want to let her go. Then we made an attempt to contact Sarah through the board. It was a success. After we talked to Sarah for a bit, we asked her if she knew Reese. Sarah suddenly stopped moving the planchette. We asked her if she was all right. She answered no. She also said that Reese isn't Reese. She said that Reese is actually a man named Roger. Sarah also told us that Roger was the one who killed her at the age of 27. The final thing she said about Roger was that if we ever told him that she was the one who told, that he would send her straight to the gates of hell. We tried to contact Reese, Roger, on December 10th, 2016, around 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We successfully contacted Reese. At that period of time, he didn't know that we knew who he really was. Then, we did something that we both regret. We asked if she was hiding anything from us. He responded this in his own words. "Fine, you fucking caught me." Then right after that he said, "Who told you two idiots?" We simply responded the internet in hopes to keep Sarah safe. Then Roger responded by saying, "You are a liar." Then the planchette started to circle around the alphabet counterclockwise, excluding the letter M. It did not touch the corners whatsoever. Summer and I started to panic, wondering what it was trying to do. I thought he simply lost control over the planchette, but Summer thought it was something more, because at that time, it was spinning around continuously for about 30 seconds. So I suggested that if we put pressure on it, it might stop it. It just kept going even with pressure, but just slower. But after we lifted the pressure, it continued to spin and got even faster. After a while, it just randomly landed on Dubai. Maybe it just got tired or got sick of us panicking. I really need to know your thoughts on this, and if this occurrence was really legitimately something evil, because I don't know what to explain it for. Thank you for reading. I didn't believe in the Ouija board because they sell them at Toys R Us, so I didn't think they would sell something dangerous to kids and adults. I've read stories about the Ouija board, but I don't know if it's true. People do make up stories, so it's hard to tell if it's true or not. Some people say the Ouija board is just a game. Others say it's not just a game, and some say it's dangerous. I had to find out for myself if the Ouija board is really dangerous. On Sunday, I decided to go to Toys R Us to buy the board. I drove my car in the morning to Toys R Us, and I was just looking around at first for about an hour. After looking around, I went to the game section and I purchased the Ouija board. I drove back to my apartment and put the board in the closet. The same day, about 10 p.m., I decided to try it out. I took it out of the box and put it on my bed. I didn't have any candles, so I just dimmed the light. I put the board on my lap and the planchet on the board. I put my fingers on the planchet and I started around in circles for about a minute. I stopped and I started saying, "Is anybody out there?" I kept saying it for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then, all of a sudden, I felt a strange presence right above me. I was so scared that I ran out of my room, and I threw the board in the garbage. I was very shaken. I went back to my room and turned the lights on, and I didn't sleep at all. And that's why I don't mess with Ouija boards. I have had several experiences, but I will tell you two of my most frightening. A friend and I had started playing with the Ouija board, and it ended up turning our lives upside down for the span of around 2 years. One night, my friend Judy, her husband Luke, Loma, and myself were watching a movie called Witchboard right in the middle of a winter storm. All footprints had been covered at this time, and the streets were empty. About halfway through the movie, the front door blew open, and we heard running footsteps come into the house, up the stairs, down the hall, and into the bedroom where Judy's 2-year-old lay sleeping. We were all just sitting there frozen in shock and fright when we heard a loud slam, which turned out to be the bedroom door, and the poor little boy started screaming, "Monster, monster." Luke took off up the stairs, only to find a very upset little boy, and nothing or no one else. As things started to calm down, Judy and I went to shut the front door, and there were still no footprints in the snow. The only snow that had come into the house was blowing from the wind. It was around March now, and one day, as I laid down for a nap, I felt the bed start to shake under me. I was uncertain if I had really felt what I thought I had, so I was not frightened, but I got up anyway. That was only the beginning. Not long after that, it became a constant thing every time I tried to lay in my bed. The shaking started to get more violent, and it also felt as if someone was punching up at the mattress from beneath. I complained several times, and no one believed me. It was now to the point where I was afraid to go to bed. I began sleeping at my friend Loma's house because her bed didn't shake. After staying at her house for 2 weeks, my mom said it was time to come home, and I did agree, but not until she promised to spend the first night sleeping in bed with me. That night, we had only been in bed for about 10 minutes before the bed started its usual shaking. It was very minor at first, so my mom started to make excuses for why it was happening. By the time 5 minutes had passed, it was now undeniable, and I could tell my mother was getting scared, but was trying to stay calm for my sake. The last straw for my mother was when the punching started. It was harder than I had ever felt before. We laid there for a moment while my mother mustered up the courage to peek under the bed. Of course, she didn't find anything, and we promptly left the room and set ourselves up in the living room for the remainder of the night. My bed continued to shake and punch for some time thereafter, but it eventually quit. However, once in a while it will start, to this day, and I just get up or ignore it, and it stops. This encounter involved a Ouija board, and possibly my guardian angel. Years ago, a friend and I were goofing around with a Ouija board. Being a bit ignorant of the unknown, I mistakenly asked it how old I would be when I died and how. It replied that I would be 16 and that I would die in a car accident. A month or two after I turned 16, I was asked if I wanted to go out with my parents the next day to run errands. I said yes. That next morning, I woke up to discover that my parents left without me. I was annoyed. An hour after I woke up, my mother called me from the hospital. They had been hit by a transport truck an hour before. When I asked why they had left without me, my mom replied that her and my dad had tried for a half hour to get me up, and then they gave up. What makes it so scary is where the truck had hit. My one brother has to sit behind my mom, and my dad does not wear a seatbelt. Had I been in that car, I would have been sitting behind my dad with the seatbelt on. The transport truck hit the car on the driver's side, almost imploding on the driver's and left backseat side. That's where I would have been sitting. Guardian angel? I think so. I was celebrating Halloween around my best mate Felicity's house. We usually have a laugh and a joke, but neither of us had played with a Ouija board before, so we gathered about 7 friends from the neighborhood. First, we lit candles, 1 black, 1 red, 1 green, and 1 clear. Fliss had purchased the board from an old shop in the Stoke Town Center. We sat down in her dining room and placed the board right in the middle of the dining room table. We all placed our fingers on the gold planchet. I was the reader, so I asked the questions. At first, we did not get any response, so we all giggled and made fun of the silly people who got themselves worked up about these silly boards. About 5 seconds after we stopped giggling, we heard a massive bang on the floor. I thought it was one of the boys playing a trick, so I suggested that we all sit legs crossed on the chairs. I made sure we were all cross-legged, and I said, "If it was a ghost that made the bang on the floor, can you please do it again?" And it did. I spoke again. We will now try to communicate using the board. So we started to use the board again, and I again asked if anybody was present who wanted to communicate with us. The planchet moved to yes. I asked for a name, and it replied, "I am unclean." Fliss's uncle had passed on, so I inquired if we were talking with her uncle Ian. The response was no. Again, the planchet moved to the following letters, "I am unclean." We had made contact with an apparent demon. We decided to say sorry for disturbing, and we thanked the spirit for its presence. However, it did not go. The spirit of demon flung Fliss back into the wall. Then it came for me. I had a vision of hell itself at that moment, and I remain grateful to this day that it did not hurt me. Hey guys, Fan here as usual, and I wanted to let you know that I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're a potential subscriber, I suggest you subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos of this nature. And don't forget to share this video, because honestly, that gets the word out that my videos do exist, and your support helps tremendously. And I said support really ignorantly. Most of the time I wish I made sense, but hey, my point is just comment and like. Maybe subscribe if you're new, and things can happen. Why don't you just end the video, Phantom, and just shut up, okay? Okay. Love you guys.